Hi, I'm Mike Seymour, and welcome to this FX podcast. Today, I'm talking to Rob Legato. Rob Legato is a three-time Academy Award-winning visual effects supervisor who's just joined Stability AI, which is the company behind Stable Diffusion. It's also a company that Jim Cameron joined last year and has an amazing pedigree of visual effects people, such as ex-CEOs of Weta Digital, as well as people like Sean Parker from the birth of Napster. So a really interesting company, incredibly progressive and advanced in their AI work. And Rob Legato is a really interesting choice to join them. So join me now as I talk to Rob on the day that he announces that he's joined that team about what he sees the future of AI is, how he sees this playing out with VFX, and what he thinks needs to be done with AI for it to work successfully inside our community. So Rob, today we got the announcement on Wednesday, US time, you'd joined an AI company, not just any AI company, one of the most prominent in the field. How did that come about? What's the backstory that got you there?
I assume it had to do with Jim. I got a thing early on that there were some things that Jim was doing, and then he thought I would be a good person for, and I didn't really know exactly what it was. And I certainly knew that he joined Stability, but I didn't even know it was that. And then Prem from Weta, called up and said, he was interested, and that Jim recommended me to help sort of figure out. It's probably very similar to what I did on Avatar. When and the story of that was Avatar I wasn't really commissioned to do anything. I just offered something that I did on Aviator. Jim really liked it. Obviously, it worked out pretty well for him. Which is basically coming up with like this way of making a movie that glues together a bunch of different technologies that were out there, but when they're glued together, they make something that becomes useful for a filmmaker, knowing that what the filmmaking process is and what's the best way of doing that. So I think why it appealed to him was that it was something that was like right up his alley. It's like I can now make this movie the way I'd like to make this movie, and so this is what I think he believes is happening with AI, is that it's all out there, it's all over the place, and everything is not, in essence, this is me paraphrasing or me interpreting, is that it's not all glued together to be useful. It's now, if you do one that works really well, you do your next shot. Well, that particular piece of software doesn't really do the second shot as well as it did the first shot, but a third piece of software does that, and it's kind of like that. It's kind of like in that realm. It's all pretty amazing, but it's not all like, can I sit down and actually make a movie with this or something, consistently creative that reflects the filmmaker.
Yeah, not only did you do that with James Cameron, but of course you also did it with Jungle Book, because that was another instance of taking a sort of an emerging tech, as it were, and crafting it to a level that hadn't been seen before.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's all about the same tech, quite frankly. I mean, it may look different to other people, but it doesn't look that different to me. It's what I was always interested in was the iterations that we go through in real time. And so what's the shortcut to that? As opposed to how do I eliminate that? It's like, well, don't eliminate that. That's where actually we make a Jim Cameron movie, Martin Scorsese movie. It's all the various real-time decisions that steer it always into the direction of the reflection of the artist or the filmmaker at the time. And I know for me, when I work, I'll shoot and I'll move the camera and I'll shoot it again. Maybe I'll try with a 14mm lens. And all of a sudden, when I edit it together, it starts to feel like a shot that I would do. But I can't do it right off the bat. I can't draw, for one. So I can't draw it and say, this is exactly what I want. I'm never changing my mind. It's like it gets me in the ballpark to allow me to go to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And then I know sort of from there, once I start going through this journey, it will eventually reflect my sensibilities. And, and that being the case, it reflects Michael Bay's sensibilities and Jim Cameron's sensibilities and Marty and cameramen in general, and any kind of visual artist, I think, kind of does the same thing. I mean, it's the same holds true for music and every other artistic discipline is you do multiple drafts until you kind of find the one that is the one that you really wanted to do. And so the technique of doing it is takes advantage of the speed of technology, that we could do it faster, but we can't replace it. It just is kind of one of those things, like a pencil and a paper with an eraser is the same creative process as a word processor. It does the same thing, just in a different way. And so now it's faster. And now it can, search all my words for me instead of going through every word and crossing it out and putting a new one in. But the end result is the same. It just now I could do it. If it took me a week to write something, it now takes me an hour to write something, because of the technology. But the written material isn't necessarily different. It's kind of a long-winded way of saying, that, but that's kind of what I think. So when I did Jungle Book, it's pretty much what I did when I did Aviator, except I didn't have the money and tools that I got when I worked on Aviator. And when I did Hugo, I had a much more scaled down version. It wasn't quite the same. I couldn't set up a motion capture studio and do that, but I could do a subset of that. And now, what I've been doing lately with Unreal by myself, essentially, is everything that I would have wanted, but I didn't have the money for or the budget for on other movies. But now the technology has caught up with me, so now I can do that. I could use motion capture stuff to I take off a line. Now there's reams and reams of motion capture data that's available that now makes it easy to glue together in Unreal, and so I can make up a scene pretty quickly myself. I don't need an animator necessarily for some things, you do for other things, but for some things I don't really need, since there's so many available things on the marketplace, I don't really need a production designer to come up with a building or a street or a thing or cars or whatever. I could start assembling that stuff myself and come up with a sequence that is reflective of how I would shoot something. And so it doesn't really replace my brain. It just gives me an opportunity to prove or disprove if it was a good idea or not a good idea, and to iterate it, get it better.
You spoke at the American Society of Cinematographers panel session in, I think, November. And if I could just quote you back to you, I think you said then,
Okay.
I use it as a tool. And then you encourage filmmakers to learn about it, saying, don't be fearful of the technology. It's not going to make a movie. But like in that comment, if we unpack it for a second, there is a kind of fear amongst certain members or certain parts of our community about AI, just full stop. They just don't feel comfortable with it. Do you think this is like a transition that happened when digital came along, in that it's just the people don't know it? Or do you think that there is more validity to the concerns that people have?
There's a different validity to it, but it's like any technology that's ever come out. When sound came out, it's going to ruin movies. Movies are beautiful, eloquent, expressions of art that completely ruined when sound comes in. Now it's garish and loud and obnoxious, and we don't like those kind of movies. It takes all the beauty out of it, and then it catches up with. Then all of a sudden you have a very good screenwriter, and then all of a sudden the camera's free to roam around the set because somebody figured out the technology to blimp a camera to make it silent so it could move again instead of being in a booth. And so every version of it seems to be a setback and then gets incorporated in, but never replaces anything. I mean, does it really replace this color, really replace black and white? Yeah, to some degree it's more prevalent. But some of our best movies in the color era have been black and white. Do movies themselves replace theater? No, it's its own thing. Does TV replace movies? No, it's kind of the same thing. So all of it is not the seismic disaster that it portends to be. AI is a little different because it has other implications, and we've had multiple films, including Jim's, that sort of fictionalize the fear of it. And so that's where everybody goes to immediately. Like, it's going to take over your life. It's going to tell you what to do. It's going to do
Hollywood has been very good at portraying AI as a bad guy. in the narrative of popular culture. So it's probably no surprise that people.
It's a great bad guy. I mean, it's this moralless, feelingless machine that has one mission and it doesn't care about you and it's going to do whatever it takes to
And
survive.
you're not picking on any minority when you have an AI bad guy.
No, I
Yeah,
mean,
you're not.
I don't know if everybody hated Hal, but most people did.
Yeah.
It's like,
So one of the things that's, and I know you can't speak for Jim Cameron, but one of the things that's been reported, and I don't even know if it's true, is that there was going to be a card at the beginning of the next Avatar film saying that AI wasn't used in the production of this film. So I think for people that don't know, the fact that he joined the board, of the of Stability AI like a year ago was kind of like a surprise, right? Like there is a duality to this thing in that some respects people want to know what is and isn't with AI, and others are embracing it. And even inside that one camp at Lightstorm, there seems to be both things happening.
well, I mean, Jim is also one that doesn't shy away from technology. He may not be using it now, but it's like I need to know about it because in the future, if I could make my 5 avatars in 1 year instead of 5, I still want to make the 5 avatars, but like everybody, he's not getting any younger, and and it takes a long time. It takes a lot of money. It takes all the various things. If I could do the same job quicker with technology, I need to investigate it. I need to see what it is. I think that there's the science fiction, the science fact of it right now, and everybody leaps to the science fiction of it before they do the science fact of it.
Certainly
So
from my point of view, it's creating jobs in some areas, and it's certainly an incredibly interesting technology for the ability to do things that it can't do. But to go back to your earlier point about it being very patchworky at the moment, yeah,
mhm.
I know that your title at the new company is Chief Pipeline Architect, but I kind of interpreted that as you being uh, like somebody that is concerned about how the tools can facilitate a filmmaker. So I assume that your role is less about getting in there and actually doing pipeline architecture and more making sure that it works for filmmakers. Would that be an accurate description?
Yeah, that's more accurate than maybe what the description seems like it is, because that's
Yeah.
ultimately what I did on Avatar. It's like the reality is I didn't invent anything. I just took inventions that came that were really clever and glued them together so I could use it to make a movie. So I could shortcut like the birth of it in my case, which isn't necessarily the birth of it, it's just the birth of my case, is I never shot a plane crash before. And I was my first Martin Scorsese movie. I didn't want to blow it. So I wanted some practice. I wanted to, make mistakes without anybody seeing them with experience, what works, what doesn't work. And so if there was a thing that was available to me, which is I knew Motion Builder was available, I knew Wheels could talk to the motion Builder. I knew if I got an animator, they could animate my idea and then I could shoot it in real time and put it back into my vocabulary that makes it easier for me to create. Because I'm not a CG, especially then, I couldn't sit down and do it, animate something on a timeline and make it look like something. I had no ability to do it, but I could operate a camera. I could aim, I could tell everybody what the camera needs to do and what the scene needs to be, but I just couldn't do it myself. So what I ended up doing is gluing it together and then saying, what would be really cool now that I glue this together is there's a motion capture stage. If I could take live input with pan and tilt wheels, I certainly could take live input with motion capture because that technology was being done at Polar Express, but they weren't shooting it when they just did the stage play first and then they shot it later, where it's like, as a filmmaker, I don't want to do the stage play and then come back later and put a camera on it because I may change the play once I photograph it. I may need you to take a step closer to camera and drop the camera down lower, and you'll appear to be more heroic than you really are in the scene because I'm applying filmmaking acumen to support what the acting is doing or what the story is being told. So, it's like, well, once you do that, then the next piece of technology within that is like, well, I like Steadicam shots, but I'm not a Steadicam operator, but I like to operate. So I could have you walk around with a stick like we did on Jungle Book, and I'll operate the head of it. So, and now you could do that with a Movi. And that's one of the reasons the Movi thing worked is that's what I asked the guy to do who invented the movie. Like, I want to operate the camera. And then I could have anybody essentially. And Steadicam operators are really great, so I don't want to diminish them. But they're very few and far between. There's only a few really great ones, and sometimes you inherit, and it's happened to me, not a great one. Just because you have a Steadicam and you're a Steadicam operator doesn't make you good at it. It just means that you bought it and you're a novice operator. And I got screwed by, I hired a Steadicam operator who's terrible. Well, if I could operate the camera and he could walk around with the stick and keep that part steady, and then you had a device that you put on there that is a stabilizer, I have everything. I have a great Steadicam operator all of a sudden. I have a phenomenal Steadicam operator. It doesn't roll, it doesn't do anything, except you're just a human dolly, which is ideally moving a thing that I don't need dolly track for. So did I invent that? Not really. There's a stabilizer. There's a remote head. There's a Steadicam, which will hold the head of a camera. It could also hold the head of a stabilized head with a camera on it, and I could operate it. And so, like, again, I didn't invent it. I took advantage of it. And so it made me make a better shot. No one gives a damn, what I used when I shot anything. They only care about what they see at the end of the day. And that's the kind of the bottom line, I think, with all the AI stuff. Is no one really cares the mechanics of how you produced what you produced. They only, do they like the music or they don't like the music? If you synthesize it or you mixed it differently is immaterial and not part of the equation. It's interesting. It's fun to talk about and write about. But at the end of the day, you either like the music or you don't like the music.
Yeah, but I think one of the things you've had as a theme through the films that we've been discussing is you take the new technology and you find ways to make it work in the language of the cinematographer, in the language of the director, in the world of the crew, as opposed to saying, "Hey, throw out everything that you know, and you have to come over here and start using a mouse in a way that's odd to you or doesn't feel comfortable to get what you want." And so I was joking with a mutual friend of ours, Ben, when I heard about your appointment, that if you could do that for AI, if we could get you happy with that for AI, you'd make half the industry happy, right? Because that's something that's really needed, that facilitation of the filmmakers with their skills, with their understanding and their creativity, being able to harness the tools rather than getting into some kind of weird iterative cycle of just hitting the button to keep going to see if the next one might look kind of a bit better than the last one, but having no control over it.
Yeah, I mean, what I've learned over the years, and I've seen it evolve and de-evolve, is every time something happens, somebody wants to replace how we work, not knowing that how we work is the best way you can make a movie. And every time I've ever tried to change the system, and I don't try very hard, you can't. You need a bunch of people, you need a script, and the director interprets it and go, oh, it would be interesting if I staged it like this. And the actor said, well, I don't know. What if I said this instead of that? What if I took his line? What if I didn't say anything? And he just, the reaction, and that collusion of all these people trying to achieve of making a good film and the iteration process of, let me shoot 5 takes of that. And you know what? I think I'm done. And the actor says, well, you know what? Can I try something? Sure, try it, and then they come up with genius. Then they come up with something that they wouldn't have done in the first 4 takes, but the 5th take, they've exhausted these other things and this other idea appealed to them. So if you eliminate the way we work, you eliminate that. And that's not how you make a movie. That's not how you compose a song. That's not how you do anything. Write a script, write a book. A lot of this will sound a little off topic, but it's not. People confuse writing with the physical action of typing, and it's like, no, writing is walking around the block and going, how do I figure out how to do this? And then you go, I got it, and you go sit down and record it. Same thing with music. You have something in your head, and if you think you're writing music, that's the creative process. No, the process was prior to that, and you're being a stenographer and jotting it down. So you're really miscommunicating what the filmmaking process is. That it's the moment I sit down on a computer and say, move the camera, push it in on this guy's face. He's going to say this. Here's my typed dialogue. Now he's going to deliver the typed dialogue. and it looks pretty natural. You know, some of the stuff is like astounding what it does. And you go, God, that's great. Now let me do the close up and let me try the serendipity of it all. Maybe don't say anything, maybe just act it. Well, I don't have that mechanism because that mechanism doesn't exist because you fixed it for me, but I don't want it fixed because the nature of making The Godfather and leave the gun, take the cannoli was the actor came up with that. You know, he was in the perfect spot, in the perfect place to do it, but Francis Coppola didn't write it, but he interpreted the moment correctly. He was in a place where he could contribute it, and we remember that line to this very day because of the nature of creativity. And so once you discovered it all along the years that you've been doing this, that you can't fix it. And it sounds crazy and unruly and messy and all that stuff, but you need the mess. You need the craziness to come up with something. And also you need the talent. Like not everybody can sit down and compose music. Not everybody can cook a nice meal. Not everybody can make a good movie. Just because you like to and you have the same mechanics, the same tool, and everybody thinks that all of a sudden you can, and it's like, well, that's not the case.
Yeah, I think some of the problem is that the industry itself is going through hard times for a whole lot of reasons, right? Like streaming wars, just a bunch of stuff with strikes and how there's been realignment and stuff. Unfortunately, while all that's going on, they're conflating that with AI, which is not
Right.
a valid thing to be doing. But of course, if times aren't great, then people are tending to sort of point at anything as a reason
Yeah,
why
and I
things
mean,
aren't great.
and it will to some degree. Some jobs may be minimize the brute force jobs, the 100 people it takes to rotoscope something because I need it next week and I don't have time to wait, that may change, but it won't change the task and somebody still has to do it. Somebody has to be in charge of doing it and curate it and say, because things make mistakes. You don't just hit a button, it comes out perfectly no matter what you're doing. So right off the bat, somebody is doing it. So I equate it with, it's a really fantastic assistant. Some people are very effective at coming up with the ideas, but their organizational skills are mediocre. They don't get to something on time. They almost are self-defeating. But if you could pair them with somebody who takes care of that for them, all of a sudden you become very productive. It doesn't make you produce the genius that you bring to it by doing it better than showing up on time. Than instead of looking all over the place for your notes, it's in one concise spot. It just helps you. It helps you live up to your potential. And I think this is the same thing. I honestly believe it that I use it every day. It's a fantastic.
I use it every
assistant
day.
for me.
Yeah, I mean, and it's
And
not
if
one
somebody
thing,
took it
of
away
course.
from me, if somebody took it away from me, I'd be really upset, because I now depend on it for lots of stuff that makes my life easier. It, does it make it better? Well, maybe because I get more ideas per day, expressed than I did before. And there's some negativity to that. I remember when I was starting doing digital stuff, there was something about you have a crack at something to get it onto film, to get it into the lab, to see it the next day. So there's a certain amount of energy you put into doing it right. And overnight, when all your insecurities come out, it's like, shit, well, maybe I should have done this. I mean, you're trying to figure out how to do it. And you had this period of time that when you see the result, you go, I know how to fix it now. Because I was worried about it before. Now that I see it, it confirmed what I had. And the next iteration became that much better, only because I thought about it. Well, in digital, it was like instantaneous. It's like, okay, that's broken. Now I fixed sort of that, but there's something still wrong with it. And I'm done. But the 5 hours it took for me to be insecure and ruminate about it are gone. And so there's a certain amount of, you still can't fix everything. And it does, but people who don't know how to do it at all think you can. Well, I could solve that for you. It's like, no, you can't, because I don't want you to, for one. And two, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Look, it's been great. It's been great talking to you, Rob. I'm incredibly enthusiastic about what is going to come out of this collaboration because, as I say, the industry kind of needs
correct.
it. Well, so do I. We really need it. We need these tools adopted and absorbed in a way that's filmmaker friendly. And
we should walk into it and not have to change and learn that much.
Yeah, we should respect the craft that is the craft rather than the mechanics of the craft that may be changing. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so well, again, I that's what I firmly believe, and the proof's in the pudding. You know, my one of my favorite films to work on was Lion King, and I was able to bring the age of this sort of kind of work to somebody like Caleb, who has a brilliant eye and is just a natural born filmmaker. And it's because I made it so that he could just step in on day one and just operate a camera. And well, I need that moved over here. And when I need to move this dolly track, I need to rack focus when it feels right to, and if I made it so he was using a mouse and a keyboard, he would be frustrated and not be able to do his job and use the 40 years of experience that he's developed and now try to make them do something else. So it works. I mean, a great production designer would be completely jazzed by the ability to do their work faster and see results sooner. As long as they didn't have to do it themselves, as long as they didn't have to type in the things or model a object or whatever, if it was done for them and they just did what they did, they would be brilliant at it.
Well, again, thanks for taking time to talk to us.
No, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
All right, I'll talk to you.
Well, again, I want to thank Rob for joining us. John Montgomery will be back next week. He's on holidays this week, so I hope you're having a good time, John. Until then, I'm Mike Seymour. See you.